Some people were never taught boundaries because in their family, boundaries were seen as betrayal. And that's what makes enmeshment so damaging. What looks like closeness from the outside can actually be emotional control, guilt, dependency, and a complete lack of individuality. And in enmeshed relationships, you're expected to think the same, feel the same, prioritize the same people, and often sacrifice your identity to keep the peace. And the moment you start becoming your own person, you're suddenly called selfish, distant, disrespectful, and changed. In this video, we're going to talk about what enmeshment really is and how it affects your relationships and self worth, and why so many people struggle with guilt when they finally start setting boundaries. Enmeshment is a relationship dynamic where boundaries are weak, blurred, or non existent. Instead of healthy emotional connection, there's over involvement, emotional dependency, and control disguised as love or closeness. In healthy relationships, people are allowed to have individuality, but in enmeshed relationships, individuality can feel threatening. Enmeshment doesn't always look abusive at first. Sometimes it looks like a parent who's overly involved in your emotions or relationships, feeling responsible for someone else's happiness, guilt for needing space or privacy, being expected to prioritize family over yourself at all times, feeling like you can't disagree without conflict or punishment. And a lot of people normalize this because they grew up in it. When you grow up around enmeshment, you often struggle with boundaries, people pleasing, guilt, identity issues, fear of disappointing others, feeling emotionally responsible for everyone around you. You may even confuse control with love because that's what was modeled to you. Why boundaries trigger enmeshed people? This is very important to understand. When you start setting boundaries in an enmeshed dynamic, it disrupts the system. People who benefited from unlimited access to you may start reacting emotionally. That's why boundaries are often met with guilt tripping, anger, silent treatment, victimhood, accusations that you've changed, because your independence feels like rejection to people who were used to emotional access without limits. Love should not require you to lose yourself. Healthy love allows individuality. Healthy love respects privacy, autonomy, and emotional boundaries. If someone only feels close to you when you have no boundaries, that's not healthy attachment. Healing from enmeshment often means learning that boundaries are not cruelty, that you're allowed to have your own identity, that saying no does not make you selfish, and that protecting your peace is not betrayal. A lot of people raised in enmeshed environments have to learn who they are outside of obligation. Enmeshment teaches people to feel guilty for becoming individuals. But growth requires separation. You are allowed to evolve, think differently, have boundaries, and choose yourself without carrying the weight of everyone else's emotions. And the people who truly love you will not require your self abandonment in order to feel connected to you. Have you ever experienced enmeshment or struggled with guilt for setting boundaries? Okay. So, enmeshment can happen, with, any, family dynamic, culture, background, single parents, married parents, both, parents in a household. And it can happen with mothers and sons, or daughters and fathers, or mothers and daughters. And, you get the point. But usually, what I find is the most common form of enmeshment that I've seen and read about online is the mother and the son um, enmeshment dynamic. And I've seen so many women, reveal that their, husbands or their boyfriend's mother caused a lot of strife in their relationship or their marriage to the point that they had to end it. And that is really something. And it is scary because you could fall in love with someone and think, maybe I could, build a family with them, and then you realize something's not right here, and you find out, it's their mother is the one causing issues. Often we may think that the other woman is just, some woman is trying to, get with your man. Sometimes it's not another woman at all. It's that man's mother is the one, coming in trying to cause chaos and confusion and get him not to be with you because of jealousy. She feels like she can see him like wanting to spend time with a woman, or he's changing for a woman, and that can make her jealous. Like, why is he doing that for her? Like, and there have been some men, because most men are probably not going to admit, even if they noticed it, that their mother was jealous of their girlfriend or their wife. I've seen comments also of men stating that they saw with their own eyes that their mother was jealous of their wife. And it blew their mind, because the wife had already, kind of told them about, some things, and they really just didn't believe it. And then they finally saw it. And that's wild, because could you imagine being married to someone and you're pointing out, hey, your mom is doing this and I don't like it, and he's like, oh, blah, 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 just how she is, like blowing it off. And then one day it could be something that's kind of major or just very obvious. So all that time you were gaslighting the wife or the girlfriend about your mom, and she was right the whole time. And that's pretty common. And it's another reason for the dating pool having so much pee in it, because, okay, you got to sift through like so many different types of people, individuals. You got to also think about the family backgrounds that these people come from. And if it's something like that, that's enmeshment, someone who really does not have their own sense of identity, that relationship is really not going to progress anywhere. You're going to keep going in circles. You're going to think, oh, we're making some progress finally. Oh, going backwards, going back. That's how it's going to feel. You're going to think you're making progress, and it's going to always be something, because that person has identity issues. That person can be very confused about making decisions, because they are struggling to separate from their family's grip. So hate to say it, but people like that are probably not going to be meant for marriage or a long-term committed relationship. They're probably going to find themselves just constantly cycling through short-term relationships, because not very many people are going to be willing to deal with such a confused individual. And a lot of times people like that, especially men, have some form of arrested development. I mentioned this in my previous video. They're very immature. And oftentimes it could be because their mother is immature, or whoever the enmeshed, parent is. And that's what was modeled to them, immaturity, manipulation, control tactics. You will find a lot of men like that who are enmeshed with their mothers are very controlling, and some of them are outright abusive. You have to pay attention to those signs, to those red flags, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't think this is for me, because it's there. You pay attention, you'll see. And it's very, very concerning, and it will make you want to, take a rest, take a step back, and really contemplate on if that's the relationship for you, because when you notice the red flags and you really just, hey, don't rush things, let's like slow things down and really think, you can decipher, hey, this is what's going on here. Um, this could lead to something very bad later. Um, but that's what you have to do these days. You can't rush in anything. I would suggest no one rush in a relationship. Take your time. And if you're noticing things, you need to figure out what those things are and if it's worth it. Because a relationship with a person who's enmeshed with their parent is going to be extremely emotionally draining. You're not going to get anywhere. 9 times out of 10, that person is not going to be vulnerable with you. Um, there's everything's going to be superficial. You're not going to get anywhere. Even if they try to talk like they want something serious, marriage and a child, it's not going to get to that point. And you really should not dive into anything like that with someone like that. Or you're going to find yourself um, in a nasty divorce or custody battle. I would suggest any woman to not involve yourself with a man who's enmeshed with his mother, if possible. I mean, you could leave one man who's like that and then end up with another one. Maybe it won't be so bad, but at least if you can find a person who's willing to like see, their relationship with their mother for what it is and like start doing the work to kind of, you know, distance themselves emotionally some, or distance that, uh, lessen that grip that they have over them. It doesn't mean that a man has to cut off his mother, but a man needs to be able to establish boundaries with his mother and let her know, hey, I'm not your man. I'm not your husband. I am your son. And you need to understand that I'm going to find a woman who I want to make my wife and mother of my children, and you're going to respect her, and you're not going to keep up chaos and confusion because of jealousy or your issues that you have with your emotions, or it could be a personality disorder or mental health issue, whatever it is. It's his job to have that conversation with his mother and set those boundaries, because if he doesn't, things are going to get worse. Then it's never going to progress. Y'all are going to have these same issues over and over. I have seen several women discuss this, how their marriage was ruined by a man's mother, their mother-in-law. And I'm just like, I don't even think I could walk down the aisle with someone if I felt like it's just going to fail because he doesn't know how to set boundaries with his family. And sometimes it's not always a mother. It could be a sister, a grandmother. It could be just anyone, but it's usually with men. It's usually a female relative that I've heard about and seen. It takes a man that is truly self-aware and can really examine his relationships in his life and where he wants them to lead, and what he can see is going to be a hindrance into those relationships that he wants to succeed. It takes a very self-aware man to be like, oh, my mother is the common denominator in all the issues in my relationships. She's the common denominator. She's the one who's always saying negative things, trying to find dirt on women, just doing all sorts of stuff, doing stuff that a jealous woman would do, a woman that's like trying to be with him. Like, you're not even acting like the mother, you're acting like a jealous other woman. Like, when it becomes that, like, I feel like a man needs to shut that down, because that's weird. That's weird behavior. And you cannot progress in your life if you have a mother trying to stop everything. How can you have a wife and children and put your family first? That's going to be your family when you get married and have kids. Your mother becomes your extended family. Your family that you have with your spouse, that's your immediate family. That is the family you're supposed to be focusing on. And so many men, they're like little boys still, because their mother has pretty much groomed them to be their little boy forever. He's going to have trouble establishing those boundaries and understanding, like, oh, this is not me being disrespectful or disobedient. Like, this is me becoming a man. Every man is going to go through that process. They've been doing this since the beginning of time. Like, we don't really, seems like we stopped doing that as a society. Like, something changed to where women just expect their sons to be their little boys forever. I don't know if it's because the fathers started leaving the homes or what, and they were just trying to fill that gap instead of just getting them another partner. They wanted to make their, what, some people call them sonsbins, like son husbands. Like, they made their sons into their surrogate husbands, to meet their emotional needs and be their shoulder to cry on, telling them all their issues with men and this and that, telling their sons that she's the only woman he'll ever love, type things. They fill their little boys' heads up with that, and it's very sick. And that's one of the reasons why we have so many men out here these days who just refuse to grow up, because their mothers literally groomed them to be that way. She modeled those control tactics and those guilt tactics and emotional manipulation. And that's why these men, they know how to use these control tactics on women. They learned it from their mother. A lot of these men, their fathers were not around, not in the home. And so who do you think they learned this stuff from? Who was in the home? Who were they around like 24/7? Their mothers. That's why they act like that. And you're in that, if you're a woman in the years where you're ready to settle down, find a husband, and have children, you're gonna have to really like bunker down on your vetting process and just date. Don't rush anything. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I like him, I feel those butterflies or whatever. Sometimes that stuff is gonna fade away once reality hits and you see a situation for what it is. I promise you, those feelings are gonna go away. Like, you need to be clear-headed and think logically. Do not think emotionally. It can be difficult at first, but you have to train yourself to look at everything logically, especially relationships. And is, this person the best suited, for me, or the life that I want? Will they be the most fit? For a husband and a father. And if you feel like, they have more of a mindset of a child, little boy, and their mommy's going to be overly involved, you probably don't need to go that route. You probably don't need to go that route. Like, no. It's just, the best thing you could do is just take your time until you come across a man that is very mature and stable. You're never going to find a man who's probably just like 100% mature. But if you can find someone who's on the same level as you or more, you're already like a bit ahead of the game, because it's really bad out here. But enmeshment really is something that should be discussed more. Fortunately for me, I've known about it for some time. I'm in a lot of different groups and, follow a lot of pages. So I've always been aware of like the whole weird boy mom thing. And another word for emotional enmeshment or family enmeshment is, another term is emotional incest. That does kind of make it sound more, more weird, more nasty. But sometimes the weird terms is what gonna get people's attention. Emotional incest, because that's what it is. These women are in an emotional incestuous relationship with their sons. They treat their sons like he's their boyfriend or their husband, like he's their lover, and that's very strange. So you got to pay attention to those dynamics. And like, if you see a man can never seem to get his life together, but his mom is always there bailing him out of his problems, like, that's gonna be a red flag. He's not gonna be able to handle life on his own. And for someone who, if you want someone who's husband and father material, they have to know how to handle life, whatever life throws at them. Mommy shouldn't be running to the rescue. She needs to be focused on her own life. She shouldn't even be the first person he calls when something happens. It should be a man, in my opinion. Like, It shouldn't be your mother. But if that's what it is, if always, yeah, that's someone with the mind of a boy. I mean, and a lot of these men, they'll be messed up for life because of their mothers. Sometimes these men don't even like their mothers like that. It's all an act. Honestly, it's all about appearances. So, other people can think, oh, yeah, look at us. We're so close and tight knit. And it's really fake. It's really fake. And there are people, I've come across men, they hated their mothers because she was very abusive to them as children, like abusive, locked them in closets, beat them, left them in the dark, just let their fathers abuse them, all sorts of stuff. They hated that woman. But it's like at the end of the day, they were still seeking her approval, like, oh, I want you to meet my mom. You just told me you hated her, and what she did, you want me to meet her. Why would I want to meet someone like that? But, you do it because they want you to do it, but you're aware how she was. Okay. But they don't really fool with her. Even to this day, some of these same, they don't fool with their mom. They live in another state. They come see her every now and then. They only probably see their grandchildren maybe like once a year, if that. Like, there are some men, they really cut them off. They talk to them if they feel like they're in therapy and they're healing and they're in their forgiving process. But there are some men, they will get to that point. They will cut them off. Maybe they were never enmeshed with them, but their mothers could have been enmeshed with them. But with all the abuse and toxicity, they distance themselves. And then you have some men, they're more so in a cycle of dependency with their mother. She gives them money. She gives them a place to stay. They don't really like her, but they tolerate her just so they can have some stability and so they can get on their feet or whatever it is. So it's not always like true closeness, like they just are one big happy family and love each other. Sometimes it's really just for appearances, or they're really using each other. One's using one for this thing, the other for that one. But either way, it's all rooted in control. She knows, oh, look, I got money that you need, you gotta do what I say. And he knows, oh, I can't even date, or have, do this or do that because she's nosy. She's all in my business trying to find out who I'm dating and weird stuff. These men be knowing. They know their mothers are weird. They know. It's just more so if the man is strong enough to actually establish boundaries. And like I said, if you realize he's not, you need to run because it's not going to go anywhere. If you are brave enough to marry them, just be warned. And y'all probably not going to make it. You have a kid with them. It's probably going to be a mess. So, been wanting to talk about this subject for a while, and I knew it was going to be a long video. I understand I'll probably cover this topic again, but I didn't want to talk too long about it. But just know, like, it's beyond being a mama's boy. Sometimes it's really a very extremely unhealthy connection, and I need y'all, ladies, and just whoever, just open your eyes to people's family dynamics. It will reveal a lot. And you need to think about, would you want to bring children into this? That's what I do. Like, would I want to marry into this? Would I want to bring children into this? And I sit with everything I observe, and I come to my conclusion based on that. Because I'm the type, I'm just not going to marry somebody just because of how they are. Like, I need to know, like, what I'm getting myself into. And if I feel like it's going to be more than what I bargained for, and it's going to be a lot of mess and drama and things that can be avoided and cleared up, but if I feel like the man is not going to handle that and he's just going to literally be very passive and allowing me to be abused or, just disrespected, I'm just not going to do it because I know how I'm going to react. So to keep everybody, you know, yeah, it is best for me to opt out. So I would suggest any woman that, if you're trying to make a decision, if you don't know, you could be already in that situation. I would suggest you don't go through it. You don't go through with it. I would suggest you opt out. If you want your life to be less stressful, less chaotic, you would not put yourself through that. Because it's not, even if they decide, okay, I will cut off my mother, we can move somewhere else where she can't, her influence is not so strong. He's still going to have those identity issues. He's still going to have those control issues. He's still going to have those guilt issues and the lack of boundaries. Like, is he's going to just be very emotionally dependent. You're going to have to, you pretty much can be walking on eggshells, or just constantly explaining yourself about how he should treat you, because he wasn't shown properly how to treat a woman. His mother only showed him how to treat her. So you will be just constantly like trying to teach someone how to love you and how to treat you. And as full grown adults, we shouldn't have to do that. We should only have to tell someone one time and they should get it. But just keep that in mind. You know, everyone's got to make their decision if that's what you want to do. But I know for me personally, it's a no. I would rather be alone before I take on something like that. That's too much. That's too much. Like the horror stories I read, that was enough for me. I already knew like it would be bad, but like just seeing horror stories, like, yo, these are women who just, they already knew that their mother was gonna be causing problems. Like, I couldn't even walk down the aisle just knowing that, like, this not gonna last. Like, what is the point? I'd be a runaway bride. Like, no. Hey, I'm gonna just keep that in mind. People don't want to establish boundaries with their family. When it comes to their relationships, man, that is a big red flag, and it's probably going to always be that way. However things usually are in the beginning, that's how it's going to stay. And if someone hasn't shown you in real time that they've changed, like truly changed, and they're not just manipulating you to stay with them, then it's best to walk away. So yeah. Let me know what y'all think in the comments, you know, about enmeshment, if it's something that you've experienced or observed in someone else. It could be within your own family. You could have maybe had a brother enmesh with your mother, you know, or dated someone like that. Like, just let me know. And did they feel guilt for setting boundaries, or was there like a bunch of drama? Like, just, I think we all know at least one person, or whether it's in our family or outside, like it's very common, honestly. Thank you for tuning in if you lasted this long. Remember to subscribe, like, check out my other links. I'll see y'all later.